Welcome to this episode of the Mindful in Minutes podcast. I'm Kelly, and today we are doing a special Freeform episode because it is just in a couple of days Mindful in Minutes' 7th birthday. So what would that mean? That means that Mindful in Minutes would be like starting the second grade, which is insane. That is so wild to me that, first of all, that it's been 7 years. So much has happened in the last 7 years. And also it's been really fast at the same time. I just think about, I think anytime you have like a milestone in a way, you think about all the things that have happened within that chunk of time. And it's just so much. Like, I feel like I'm a completely different person. My life is completely different. I'm in a different life stage. It's just really wild to think about. So we are gathered here today to celebrate the Mindful in Minutes birthday episode. However, when you're looking at the title of this and you're like, Kelly, why would we be talking about failure on an episode that should in theory be a victory lap? Well, I am so glad that you asked. And if you didn't, I'll answer that question anyways. Basically, if you've been around for at least the last few years, I've started doing this thing every year where I do a little bit of like a Mindful in Minutes Wrapped, where I talk about just some of the different milestones, things that happened, like the top episodes, things like that, which is fun. I also share my dreams for the upcoming year, and then I look and kind of just hold myself accountable in a way, but look at the dreams or the goals that I had for the upcoming year. And then I'm really upfront and honest with you about how I did on those goals. And I have to say, when I was reviewing the goals and looking at like, what were those dreams? How did I do? I feel like I just wrote these. I thought to myself, I was trying to remember, and I was like, do I do the annual goal review thing on the birthday episode, or is it for the first of the year? And I couldn't remember because I felt like I had just written them. So I thought, surely I do that in January. No, even though it seems like I just wrote these, it's already been a year and it's time to review them. And here's the thing. I hardly met any of my goals this year, which is why I want to talk about failure, embracing failure, what that means, how I feel about it, and what I've learned this year. And I also just wanted to be really upfront and honest. I guess I could just skip it if I wanted to and just pretend like I don't do this every year, not share that I fell short on about 80% of my goals and my dreams this year. But I wanted to share it because I think it's good to talk about. I also like sometimes when I follow creators, it seems like they have their life together. It seems like they are always doing these amazing, incredible things. And I know that that's probably not what's going on, or that's not what's going on 100% of the time. And every once in a while, so I'm listening to a podcast or things like that, and one of the podcasters will mention that they feel like they're in like their flop era, or they'll be like, I don't know, that last episode, you must not have been into the topic because no one listened to it. It feels really good and validating to me because I'm like, that does happen. Sometimes people won't listen to an episode and you're like, oh, I guess people didn't really like that topic. Or the other thing will happen and you're like, wow, I guess everyone really wanted this meditation. And I find it really validating, but also very kind of like grounding for me when I hear other people that I perceive them to have. And I'm not saying anyone here perceives me to have my life all together. I mean, surely if you've been listening to this podcast for long enough, you know I do not have my whole life together. We're all just doing the best we can with what we have. But I know that a lot of times, like if you're on my newsletter or when I share on social media, or even like the intros to these episodes where I'm like, hey, here's what's coming up. We're doing this, this retreat. Oh, this retreat sold out. Oh, this book is coming out. That I usually just share the upcoming things, which is the stuff that I was able to take from point A to point B. And that's what I share because it's this completed thing. What I'm not sharing is, hey guys, I was going to do this thing this month, but you know what? My family needed me, or I had to be a caregiver for a family member the last few months. And so I didn't finish it. Like I don't share those things because there's really no point in sharing it. I share the things that are complete, ready to go, ready to share. And I think that sometimes can give the illusion that I must be hitting like 100% of my goals or completing all the things that I wanted to complete. And that's just not how it works. And that's not what's happening. And so I really wanted to take this sort of birthday episode that's a little bit of a combo, like victory lap, because I mean, let's be honest, most podcasts, I think the statistic out there is like, I don't know, I'm going to have to fact check this, but I think it's over half of the podcasts out there don't make it past episode 10. And I understand why. Like, it's a lot of work. It's honestly expensive. You have to pay for software. You have to pay for equipment. It's really expensive in time. It's really time consuming. And it's such a passion project for so many people. And when they're juggling, like, I am so lucky. I feel so fortunate that this also gets to be my job. I would be sharing meditation and teaching meditation even if it was still like just a passion project, a side hustle here. Like, I love it. And I'm also so lucky that the thing that I love is also my job and it helps to pay my bills. And I do have this like pinch me moment, every day. And it's just really incredible. For so many people, their podcast is what they love, but it also doesn't pay the bills for them. And that's something that then a lot of people, because it's expensive, it's a big time investment. I understand why so many podcasts don't make it past a certain episode marker. And to say that my podcast is 7 years old, it truly, like in the podcasting space, it's geriatric at this point. And it's been really cool to watch like an industry be built in real time. I say this all the time, but like when I first started my podcast, the hardest thing about it was, two things were hard about it. One, the logistics of like, how do I make this podcast and make it available on Apple Podcasts? Because that was really the only place people listen to Spotify I don't think it even existed. It definitely didn't have podcasts on it at the time, 7 years ago. But it was like, how do I get this thing out to the world? That was really hard. And the second hardest part was just telling people, explaining to them what is a podcast and how do you listen. That was the hardest part about podcasting. And now it's this whole industry. It's like there's so many twists and turns, so many more shows, so many different things. It's incredible on the one hand, because unlike 7 years ago, if you decided you wanted to start a podcast tonight, you could watch like a YouTube tutorial and you could have a podcast up and running by like the end of the day if you wanted to. That's not how it was. It was just technically way more challenging. And also it's tricky because there are more shows. I know a lot of people that feel like, what if my idea isn't original? All of this stuff. And it's just been really interesting and really cool to see an industry built in real time. Like now I have meetings with people where it's like their whole career is podcasting. Like there's podcasting networks. There's people whose job is just to like pitch guests to podcast. Like there's people who have whole careers now in the podcasting landscape. And those jobs like didn't really exist a few years ago. So that's been really, really cool. But anyways, circling back to my failure, I wanted to speak on this because I know it can sometimes feel like I'm doing a lot. People tell me this too, like they'll be like, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you have kids and you podcast and write books and all of those things. And honestly, what I'm going to be what I'm going to be sharing, revealing to you in this episode is, I don't know. One, I'm definitely not doing it all, and I don't know if I'm doing it well. And I want to dive into why. And I wanted to share this because we all experience failure. We all experience wanting to do something or intending to do something or dreaming of something and falling short. I am certainly not immune to that. No one is immune to that. Failure is a part of the human experience. And if you were to look at this past year based on my goals or my numbers, I thought of it as like if I had to do a annual like mindful in minutes or yoga for you shareholder meeting. And I was like, well, let me tell you about the year. I didn't achieve much of anything that I set out to do that I said a year ago I was going to do. I actually decreased over the year, and I only made about 20% of my goals that I set for myself. The shareholders would not be thrilled to hear that. However, I'm very lucky. No mindful minutes shareholder meetings around here. It's just me. I'm the only one that gets to decide what is a successful year or what failure looks like, how I feel about it, and what I want to do about it. And I'll say that this year in particular is one that by the numbers did not measure up to how I hoped it would be. And also, I feel like I have learned so much about myself. Maybe that sounds cliche, but I have learned so much over that process. And I want to talk about reframing failure, because failure really, it's not like it's not, of course, I want to like look at the numbers or look at the things that I wanted to achieve and be like, yes, did that, check. Oh, did that one, check. Oh, I did that one and exceeded it, check. That's what I want to do, but that's not how it always happens. And our brains are wired to the reason that checking something off a list or achieving a goal feels good is because when we do it, our brains get flooded with dopamine, that feel good hormone. And it feels good. You're like, yes, I did it. I achieved this goal. And that's just not how it always shakes out. And I'm really not feeling that bad about it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm on like my second cup of coffee for the day, so I'm feeling jazzed. But I think in the short term, when I was reviewing these and I was like, oh my gosh, I really didn't do any of that. That did sting a little bit in the short term. But then when I sat with it, when I was meditating on it in the long term, I feel better about it. And that's what I want to talk about, that reframing of failure. What do we do when we fail, when we don't meet a goal? What do we do about it? And how can we, I don't even want to say spin it. How do we embrace it? How do we embrace failure as a natural part of the human process and a natural part of evolution? So we're going to dive right into it of where I fell short of what my goals were from last year. I put my dreams for the upcoming year. And I want to say right off the bat, I don't know what I was thinking. I know I recorded this episode a little bit early. I recorded it before Poppy was born, so maybe about a month early. And I think I was living in delusion as to what I thought I could possibly do with 2 kids, being postpartum, I really scaled back for the first 6 months anyways, because I was postpartum. I was scaling back. I don't know what I was thinking, being like, here's all of these things that I think I will do, all of these areas that I will grow, but somehow I'm going to not even cut my time in half, but like reduce my time to like 40% of what I had. So I think I was living a little bit in delusion, coming off one of what I felt like by the numbers was my most productive year. So the year that I was, that was leading up to being pregnant with Poppy, and then when I was pregnant with Poppy, I was doing so much. I was creating. I, had written 2 books during that time. I was, really working on like mindful in minutes. I was doing a ton of episodes. I was doing a lot of new. And I think I thought that I could just keep that momentum going. And it's like, well, if I can do it pregnant, I could do it with the baby. No, it's not how it worked for me. Maybe, and someone in a similar situation is listening and it shaped out that way for you, but it didn't shape out for me. And so anyways, as we go through these, I was kind of looking and I was like, what on earth did I think I was going to be able to like realistically achieve? Which that honestly was my biggest learning, or my first learning point, is I was just like, wow, I need to be a little bit more realistic with what I can and cannot do. So the first dream that I had was welcoming simplicity and ease into my life with the same abundance. And this one I gave myself not a yes or a no, but like a kind of. I feel like I kept a similar amount of abundance, but it was not, it did not walk hand in hand with simplicity and ease. There are so many times, especially just in the last few months, where I've had to kind of be saved from myself in a way, where I've been like talking to a friend and they're like, do you really think you have time to do that right now? Or they'll be like, or what you could do instead of doing all of these things is maybe you could just pick one and start there. And that honestly is so helpful to hear. Like, shout out to my really good friends that are willing to be like, or maybe if you're already feeling frazzled, what you shouldn't do is try to put 5 more things on your plate. And I really feel like instead of simplicity and ease, like if I had to sum up this last year, it would kind of be frazzled and effortful. Mostly because some of it, life just really gave me some curveballs. And you guys, whatever. I probably sound like so secretive being like, oh, I'm not going to talk about these things. You guys know my personal line is I'm not going to share anyone else's information, even if it impacts me, right? It has to do with my family or a friend or even a professional relationship. I am not going to share anyone else's business on the internet for anyone to listen to, even if it impacts me. I only share my own personal stuff. And that's why I don't even share my kids that much or my husband. It's just not, their personal stuff is their personal stuff. Life did throw me some curveballs, personally and professionally, that I really had to focus on, that were kind of just some of those things where you're just like, oh, okay, well, life handed this curveball, and so we're going to deal with it. And so we dealt with it. And so certain things had to go on the back burner. So that was part of the feeling like it was frazzled and effortful, is that when life just throws you some of those curveballs, it's just like, oh, okay, I guess we are just managing this now. We're just going to get through this, or we're just, life just imploded a little bit. Now what are we going to do? And part of it too, though, was then I feel like I was trying to overcompensate, and I was really needed in my personal life this year, really needed in my family life, in my, personal life, friendships, things like that. And so I think I tried to overcompensate by being like, well, every minute that I'm not, pouring into my personal life, then I'll pour it into my professional life. And I think that just left me completely empty, not emotionally empty, but time-wise, just empty, drained. It left me with nothing to give for myself. And so that one I gave myself a kinda, because I suppose I did keep a similar amount of abundance in a lot of aspects of my life. But it certainly wasn't with simplicity and ease. So that one will give me a maybe, a kind of. Spend more time, my second one, spend more time being present with my family. This one is a definite yes. Again, part of it was by choice. Part of it was by force. There were so many beautiful moments this summer. I felt like there were just times where I was like, you know what? I could do this thing for work, but you know what I'd rather do? I'd rather just be done right now and take my kids to the pool. And I feel so fortunate to be able to do that. And I feel like this summer, my first summer as a mom of two, I really got what everyone was talking about, where they're like, summers are just crazy when you have kids. You're always running around different things. There's no routine. I got it. And also I kind of embraced that too. And I enjoyed that aspect. And then again, there are some curveballs life threw at me where it was like, okay, it's not I don't have to do this right now. So I'll kind of skip out of work early and take my kids to the pool. It was this has popped up. And so that means that next week needs to be cleared because I'm needed in this other place. So definitely, yes, I spent more time and I was more present with my family. And I really felt like I enjoyed postpartum more the second time around. You guys have heard about what a dumpster fire my postpartum experience was with pork chop. I mean, I probably gave myself postpartum psychosis by not sleeping for 5 days. And then I either had divine intervention or a hallucination of my past grandmother coming and helping me to watch over pork chop so I could sleep. That was, and that's just one instance of what that postpartum experience was. And my postpartum experience with Poppy was so different. I prepared better. I knew what to expect. I took better care of myself. I really was proactive to improve upon the experience. And that was really beautiful for me. I felt like I could be more present with Poppy than I could with pork chop. And so, yeah, that one was a definite yes. Okay, my third one, this is where I think we get into our first real big flop. Return to my study of meditation is what I put. I've been doing a lot of doing and application, but I want to do some more learning this year. This one is a hard no. I didn't do this. I wanted to do it. And there's so many twists and turns. There's so many times where I was like, you know what I'd love to do right now? Pick up a book on meditation. There's a book I have sitting on my nightstand. It's called Mind Over Matter. And I think it talks about different brainwave states, things like that. I don't know what's in it. People have recommended it to me. Couldn't tell you what's in it. because I haven't picked it up. Because every time I pick it up and I go to read, I truly get like 2 sentences in and then I fall asleep. And so I haven't read it. And I feel like I still did a lot of application and a lot of doing, and I didn't do a lot of my own personal study. And so that one was just a no. And as I was reviewing these, this is where I really started to realize that I just tried to do too many things, that I was trying to do a lot of things well, which usually ends up, and this is true in my case, you try to do a lot of things well and you end up kind of doing nothing well. Or you feel spread so thin that you're just trying to do things to like check them off the list. You're not really doing them in the way you'd want to or taking them fully to like completion. And having more time to just return to my personal study, I guess I'll give myself a couple of bonus points because I did really return to and rededicate myself to my personal meditation practice. That was a really beautiful thing that happened for me this year. And meditation has always been a part of my life. But, there were times where, it would ebb and flow. Maybe I wouldn't meditate every day. I'd just get like a few times a week. But I really reinvigorated my daily meditation practice and my free writing, journaling, creative writing practice. That's like a newer part of my practice. I really reinvigorated the meditation and then added a writing component. And that's something I'm really proud of myself for doing. And having a year that's had a lot of twists and turns, a lot of ups and downs, it's been my life raft through those twists and turns and ups and downs. I really do think of meditation for me personally. It has been the thing where I just have this vision of like, I'm in a boat and, you don't know what is, I'm just like out at sea in a boat. And sometimes it's smooth sailing and sometimes it is like you are tossing and turning. Sometimes you're in that boat and it is like, has anyone found that, here's my one like ADHD tangent I'm allowing myself for this section. Has anyone ended up on like North Sea TikTok? Or I don't know if it's on Instagram too, but like it's those videos and it always has that like creepy music. It's like, yo ho. And you guys know the sound. If you've seen it, you know it. And it's always these like boats that are like, oh my gosh, it is the scariest thing I've ever seen. Or for a while, I was randomly on like Antarctica TikTok. I don't know how these things like show up. And the Drake Shake or the Drake Lake, like what? The ocean is scary, okay? And sometimes you are smooth sailing and sometimes you are being tossed around in those scary music North Sea TikToks and everything in between. And for me, meditation, mindfulness, even my yoga practice has always been both that boat and my life preserver. So if I ever feel like I'm going to go overboard, I have that life preserver. That's how it's always been for me. And reinvigorating that practice, doubling down on that practice, adding a journaling component or a creative writing component has only kind of reinforced my boat. And I've been so grateful for that. But in terms of like my actual study, I didn't do as much as I would like. One of the things that I love about my podcast, many things that I love about being able to do this, but I do love these freeform episodes, especially like a 101 episode or looking into like nervous system in the brain, things like that, because it forces me to do the research, to study these things, to look into them and to take what I know and then learn even more. And I love that. But my goal for this, I know when I was writing it, was that I would just personally, like not even for a podcast episode or anything, just my personal return to the study of meditation. I gave myself a no on that one. My fourth goal, I had 6 of them, by the way. My fourth was travel just for me. So I wrote, I used to solo travel so much more, at least. And so I want to at least, and I said maybe a girls' weekend, but have a non-work or family vacation related travel this year. Yes, I did do this one time and it was like only a few weeks ago. So, I unintentionally hit it right before the deadline, but I did go to North Carolina for one of my dear friends, a really good friend, the kind of friend that like she flew to see me in Minneapolis for my birthday while she was pregnant from North Carolina to spend one day with me. And I don't know what I did on earth to deserve such like an amazing friend. So you better believe when her baby shower rolled around, I was there. And so I did have like a girls' weekend. And this is a friend that I met when Ben was in medical school. So we haven't all been in the same place for like a really long time. It was really fun. It was great. I did do that one. Did I imagine maybe doing it more than once? Yeah, but you know what? I did it. So we're going to check that one off the list. All right, the fifth one, I want Mindful in Minutes to grow even more. And I wrote, I want this podcast to continue to reach the people that need it. So this one again, I'm going to give myself a maybe. So Meditation Mama did grow. There's a lot of action going on over on Meditation Mama, which I did not anticipate. So anyone who is unaware, Meditation Mama is my second podcast, and it is fertility, prenatal, and postpartum meditations. It was my pandemic pregnancy project. So when I was just like at home and like semi-unemployed and Mindful in Minutes was just starting to grow and I was pregnant, I was like, well, my meditation practice is a little bit different. So why don't I share these? It started just as prenatal meditations. I was sharing the meditations I was doing while I was pregnant. But Meditation Mama this year, like it was growing. And I was like, that's me. I only share like 2 or 3 meditations a month over there, but that was amazing to hear. I've been getting great feedback on it. And I do feel like it's a place where, because it's such a specific audience, there's a lot of people who felt like, especially the fertility and the postpartum, there's some like pregnancy meditations out there. I think there's even like a couple of apps maybe, but I feel like I really helped people with that podcast this year. Mindful Minutes did not grow. It actually got a little bit smaller. Fewer people were listening this year than last year. And that's one of those at first, it kind of stings. You're like, oof, that's tough. Don't love that. Of course, every day, every week, every month, every year, my hope is that this podcast will reach more people. And that's just not how it works. Sometimes, and I do it too. I come in and out of listening. There'll be times where I, listen to a podcast religiously for like a year or two. And then for whatever reason, I get kind of distracted and I fall off. And then like 6 months later, I'll be like, oh, I miss that. And then I'll like go back to it. I get it. I totally get it. But I do think where I'll give myself a couple of points here is, although it didn't grow in the numbers, right? Like at the shareholder meeting, they wouldn't be happy about that. However, I do feel like I reached more of the people who need it. I feel like I received better feedback. I feel like I was more engaged with all of you. We were able to do more collaborative things. Like I loved the nervous system reset challenge that we did. So many of you joined. Like I kind of was just like, hey, threw this thing up on Instagram and I was like, hey, what do we want to work on next month? And you all said nervous system. And so I kind of just put it together. Not that I like slapped it together, but it wasn't like in the long 12-month plan. It was just kind of like, hey, what should we do? And then we did it. And like 700 people joined in a couple of days. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And I got like such great feedback. I just feel like even if the numbers didn't grow, I feel like I've been more engaged with all of you and that the community has been building and getting stronger. Also, I just got back from Iceland a couple of days ago, and that was a really beautiful experience. It was mostly podcast listeners there. And that was really cool to hear about like what this community means to them. And I don't know. So even if the numbers didn't grow, I do feel like I reached more of the people that needed it. And that's what's most important to me. And then my 6th and final dream or goal was I want to make more decisions based on my happiness and less on what people expect. I'll give myself a yes, and I didn't know it at the time, but I should swap the word happiness to intuition. I made so many more decisions based on my intuition, my gut, whether it's like a mother's instinct, my personal intuition, whatever it is. And I made way more decisions, all my decisions based on that. A lot of trusting my gut this year and less on what people think or expect or tell me they think I should do. And I'm really happy about that. And yeah, so yeah, I don't know. Those were my 6 goals. And again, all of this, I'm looking at this. I'm like, okay, so I'm doubling my children. I'm having another postpartum experience. I'm also having at the time, I was starting kind of the press cycle for You Are Not Your Thoughts when Poppy was like little. I remember I was, getting myself out there like 6 weeks postpartum, going on live TV, talking about my book that was being published, all this stuff. And I had just finished up the press cycle for Meditation for the Modern Family. And And I don't know why I thought that. I was like, yeah, you know what? This year, simple and easy. Just simplicity and ease, same level of abundance. Oh, and also I want to spend way more time with my family, be more present. Oh, and also I want to double down on my study of meditation. And I want to take some trips just for me. And I want to grow my podcast to a level it's never been before. And I want to be so, strong in my decisions for my own happiness. What on earth was I thinking? I don't think that's very doable. And when people say, I don't know how you do it all, I usually say, I don't. I don't do it all. I dream big and I do some things, but a lot of what you see is just like a fraction of what I was actually dreaming of. And one of my biggest learnings from this year is that I absolutely can dream big, but I need to dream big and give myself like healthy, reasonable parameters for those dreams. Because otherwise, I'm just going to keep falling short. And that also doesn't feel good. And it feels like you're just spinning your wheels trying to do all the things all the time. I also had this little Post-it or it's a note card actually, that is taped up on the wall behind my desk. And I sat down, this was for January, so I guess technically I could still make some of these goals. I still have a couple of months. But I wrote down basically all of my metric goals. So how many books I wanted to sell, how many downloads I wanted to have of the podcast, what I wanted my YouTube channel to grow to, all of these things. And I think I had like 10, basically just all of my different things that I track, Instagram, email, all of these things. I fell short by a lot on 8 out of the 10. And that is something that is, again, that shareholder meeting, they'd be like, what's going on here? And yeah, I fell short on those. It didn't happen the way that I wanted it to or the way that I envisioned it. And also I learned so much. So when we talk about this idea of embracing failure, because maybe it seems a little out there for me to be speaking so positively and upbeat about falling short in so many different areas, because I did fall short on a lot of my goals this year. And like I said, I have a tendency to want to do all of the things all the time. I said this once in a meeting with Alyssa, the beautiful Alyssa, who helps me with some of the things behind the scenes. And she's so, whenever I talk to her, I feel like the Mean Girls mom, where she's like, oh, you girls keep me so young, because Alyssa is younger than I am. She's in her 20s. But I said this like offhand comment, and I basically said something. I said, hey, for this month, I've set a goal for this. I don't even remember what the goal was. I said, I've set this goal for myself. And I go, something that I'm learning about myself is I set high goals for myself because I often meet them. And she was just like, in her like Gen Z way, she's like, yes, queen. Oh my gosh. Slay, you are her. That is amazing. I'm going to put that on my vision board. I set high goals for myself because I achieve them. And I didn't really think, believe me, I love the validation. If anyone from Gen Z wants to just, hype me up and say these phrases that I know are positive, even if I don't fully understand what they are. But the thing with that is it just had become a part of me. And I'm still kind of sitting with that one because it is true. I do set really high goals for myself because I also do often achieve them. And where I think that gets a little tricky is I think it's good to set high goals for yourself. However, I set way too many high goals for myself, and I was kind of setting myself up for failure. And something I've always struggled with personally is not tying my success to my worth. This goes way back. Me and my therapist talk about this all the time, unpacking it, going back. This goes all the way back to when I was young, really young, struggling to read. I had dyslexia and didn't know it. Got my ADHD diagnosis. The kids were so mean to me about it. I had so many teachers just say, well, she's dumb. She won't be able to do it. She won't be able to read. She's never going to amount to anything. My peers were saying that. A lot of the grown-ups in my life, certainly not my parents, certainly not Mom, if you're listening to this, not you. You get a 12 out of 10 for how you supported me through this. But something that I've learned recently, or, taking some like parenting workshop, good old Dr. Becky. But when we're kids, our external voices, so our external, specifically when we're little, the external voices of the adults around us, turn into our internal voice as we get older. Maybe a lot of you already know that. I had never thought of it that way, and it was really groundbreaking for me. Again, the external voices of the adults around us turn into our internal voice as we get older. We internalize a lot of these things. Hearing, you'll never be able to do something, or, well, she's just dumb, she won't be able to do it. That turned into my internal voice. That is something that I both kind of embraced, and it led to really low self-esteem, and also lit this fire under my butt to do something, to be like, you know what? I do have this dream and I do want to do it. And I had something to prove. And I don't really feel that way anymore. I have done enough of the internal work for now, enough meditation, sitting with it, to be able to unpack that and to realize that a lot of my sometimes unhealthy goal setting is that kind of those old external voices that is still a little bit of a lingering internal voice. But 9 out of 10 times, I feel so fulfilled in what I do, and I love what I do, and I do it because it's just something that I want to do. And I've been able to really remove myself from having my worth tied to my success or my worth tied to specific outcomes. And that's felt really good for me as I've worked on that for years. And I feel like I'm finally getting much better at it. That feels really good. But when I just, said, oh, well, Alyssa, I set these really high goals for myself because I often meet them. She thought that was like an epic thing to say. I was like, am I taking it too far again? What is my internal voice saying? How am I talking to myself? It really caused me to pause and reflect. And as I was looking at these goals that I set for myself for the first, when I was 3 weeks postpartum, it's unrealistic. And I think that's what led to me just feeling kind of frazzled and spread thin. And like a lot of effort was put into the year for not the outcome that I wanted. And I learned, to me, and maybe you're listening to this and you're just like, okay, but for me, that means so much to be able to unpack that and to say, okay, what are the external voices that I still have internalized that have now become my internal voice? And I think those voices, sometimes the volume's loud, sometimes it's soft. And I've been just looking at my own personal kind of goal setting and dreams and like, what is a good reach goal, but then not to do so many that it's like humanly impossible. So anyways, that's, one of the big things that I learned. And of course, it's like a little bit tough to talk about it, to be like, let me tell you where I fell short. Let me tell you what my personal, like, internal toxic voice sounds like, and who, how I've internalized my own, childhood trauma. That's like a little tricky to talk about. But again, my hope is that it helps if there's even one person out there that is like, okay, this either makes me feel better, or as we talk about some ways that failure is actually a good thing, it can help if you're feeling that way, if you're getting down on yourself, if you're like, I fell short on this, or I failed. My hope is that it will really help, even if it's just helping someone out there. And so this episode that is both a victory lap and an episode exploring failure, it just felt right to talk about embracing failure. And, something that I've learned is that sometimes life happens and not every year is going to be your year. It's not like the worst year you ever have in your life is from 0 to 1, and then 1 to 2 is better, and then 2 to 3 is even better, and then 3 to 4 is, let me tell you, from someone who is living a current, watching in real time, a year 3 to 4 happening, it is not our best year either. And that every single year just gets better and better and better and better. And then by the time we're 99 years old, we're having the best year of our whole life. That's not how it works. It ebbs, it flows, there's ups, there's down. Not every year is going to be your year. This last year, I don't know if it was really my year. I think it was maybe my year of like learning about myself, of being pushed in ways that made me change and grow as an individual. But growth is not linear. And it's not like we're plants. And if we just take care of our basic needs, that we'll get bigger and bigger and bigger and just keep growing in this linear way every single year. That's not how it works. Failure is going to happen. We're going to have years that weren't as good as the year before in different ways. Like professionally, this last year wasn't as good as the one before. Personally, I don't know which year was better. They were different. And That's okay. And failure stings, but it's also essential and so important. And it's honestly your greatest teacher. So many of these things I've been sitting with, I've shared a few of them, but so many things I've been sitting with, thinking about, meditating on. I never would have learned these lessons or thought about these things if the universe wouldn't have handed me the opportunity to kind of flop and then have to look inward and decide how I feel about that, what I want to do about that, what I want to learn. And I've always believed this, always, from like the day I started my business. I've always said, if you aren't failing, you aren't trying hard enough. Or if you aren't hearing no, you aren't trying hard enough. And that's the first thing why I really don't feel that bad about falling short of my goals or my metrics or whatever. I tried and I set big goals for myself. I didn't meet them. But if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. And I know that failure gets a bad rap, and of course it does for a reason. I mean, it sucks. It's like, truly, like the last thing that I want to share on this like birthday episode is like, let me tell you all about my failures and how you're going to embrace it. But I think shifting that from here's all the things I didn't do, here's where I fell short, and just seeing failure or falling short. And this is failure of any kind, not just professional. This can be something, right? Like you can feel like you had a relationship that failed, a breakup. You can feel like you failed as a parent. You can feel like you failed yourself. Like we all know, I know confidently, every single one of you, failure, at least at some point in your life. And if we look at it as a natural part of growing, evolving, changing in life, again, it can sting, it can suck, it can be awful, it can be so hard to bear. And it can be a natural part of growing, evolving, and changing in life at the same time. And so I wanted to share a few things of how failure might sting in the moment, but here's some of the things that failure actually can offer you. This is what I've been kind of embodying and thinking about. And again, maybe you have to remind yourself of this, where you're in like the first one is building resilience, right? You're in the dark depths of, the cavity of failure. And all you have to hold on to is like, well, at least I'm really building my as you're like ugly crying, you're like, at least I'm really building my resilience. But that kind of stuff, at least me, it does help. So the first one is resilience. So failure builds resilience. And it really helps people kind of develop this psychological strength. So if anyone's familiar with Angela Duckworth and her book Grit, or her idea around this idea of like grit, which is a combination of passion and perseverance, that she says it's a much stronger predictor of success than just natural talent. So the people who have more grit, again, combination of passion and perseverance, they are much more likely to succeed than people who are just kind of gifted or talented in that particular area. And experiencing failure and really pushing through, that's what helps you to develop grit. And it's also going to make you more adaptable in the future. So in those moments when you're like, I'm really building my resilience, or like, wow, this is really giving me some grit, it's actually a stronger predictor of success in the long run. People who experience failure tend to be better problem solvers. So failing at something is going to force you to think critically about it, what went wrong, and how to improve. So when I was looking, there was a study in the Journal of Applied Psychology where they found individuals who experience and analyze failure often, they usually come up with a more creative and effective solution than their peers who maybe didn't sort of have that failure. So a lot of our best innovators and problem solvers usually experience a lot of failure, and failure often, and a lot of times like earlier in life. I think that failure is also an opportunity for you to pause, reassess, and reset. I just feel this one like deep to my core, where it's like, yeah, you see all this and you're like, okay, what isn't working? Pause. What isn't working? Reassess what's happening. For me, that was, okay, I feel like I'm just trying to do all the things all the time. I'm not doing anything well. I feel frazzled. I'm tired. I'm, up late, up early, running from one thing to another, feeling like I'm not there for my family enough, and feeling like I'm failing my bit, just feeling like I'm failing everywhere. So first thing is just pause, reassess, look at what's happening, what's going on here, what needs to happen, what needs to change, hit that reset, and then try again with that improved plan. Failure also helps to increase creativity and innovation. So people who experience more failure tend to be more creative. Again, it's that kind of, you have to think outside of the box. You look at, for example, I had this goal of having even more people listening to Mindful in Minutes over the year, and that didn't happen. That gives me the opportunity. And this is not an invitation for everyone to start like emailing me their personal like grievances. I know I've said this before, but anytime I get an email and the subject line is just feedback, it's never good. It is never good. The good ones have a subject line of like, how Mindful in Minutes helped me, or hi, Kelly, or I appreciate you. Anytime I get an email, the subject line is just one word feedback. Oh man, it is brutal from there on out. So this is not an open invitation for everyone to now send me their quote feedback emails. Please don't. I'm already telling you about how I've fallen short on everything. We don't need to rub salt in the wound. However, when I look at something like this podcast, for instance, and it does allow me to, and I love doing this, like at the end of the year, maybe this is something I need to start doing quarterly. I love looking at what worked and what didn't work. And this year in particular, I have so much good data to pull from because a lot didn't work. And that gives me so much like brain food to sit on and then to ask myself, what do I want to do differently? Or what do I want to keep? What can I do for next year? And think outside of the box, have fun, be creative, decide what I want like next year to look like. What meditation topics do I want to do? What do I want to explore? Do I want to do more meditation challenges? Do I want to do more that like I get to decide then with all of this data that I've collected? And really be creative and think outside of the box. And then I have another year because I can just keep doing this for as long as I want. I love what I do. I can just like keep, I don't know. I think someone asked me the other day, they're like, how much longer do you think you'll be podcasting for? And I'm like, I've truly never thought of an end date. I just love it and I like it. And I'm just going to keep, as long as it still inspires me and it feels like the right thing to do, feels good in my heart, and like it's helping people, I'm just going to keep doing it. And so I get another year to try again, to do differently. And then if that doesn't work, I get another year to try it again. And I don't know, it really does help me to think outside of the box and be more creative because you look at like what didn't work. And even in my personal life where I'm like, you know what? I did not leave enough time for me to learn just for the enjoyment of learning. So looking at what's happening and how I can change that, think outside of the box of like, well, what would that look like? Maybe that's even just like once a week, setting out an hour where I can go for a walk and listen to a podcast that is on a particular topic I want to learn about. Even something like that would be great. But I can kind of change how I want to do it to make it work. People who experience failure tend to have better self-awareness and empathy. So experiencing failure can make people more empathetic and self-aware. And there's really these kind of two crucial aspects of emotional intelligence, if you will, which is this, kind of self-awareness and also empathy. So you do become more empathetic, right, to like other people's struggles, other people's failures when you have experienced it yourself. And failing really, it really does kind of make you by force be a little bit more self-aware because you have to look inward. You have to be like, what's going on? What am I doing to contribute to this? What happened here? Which helps to really increase your self-awareness. Yeah. And then increased connection. This one, when I was doing some research as to like, what are the benefits of failure? This one really spoke to me because I had already written most of the notes for this episode, and the increased connection. So it said that failure can lead to stronger social bonds. So there's some research done by the Social, Psychological, and Personality Science publication, and they said that sharing failures with others fosters deeper social connections, leading to better emotional support and collaborative problem solving. And so then I was like, oh my gosh, does this mean that I've just shared how I had kind of a little bit of a flop year personally? Does that like make us best friends now? Because do we now have this deep bond? Because I'm like, let me share it all. Let me share everything that didn't work this year and all the areas that I fell short. But it really solidified this idea of like, okay, even though it's kind of scary to talk about this stuff, just put it out there into the world. I feel that with other people. When I hear about other people, when they're just like, oh man, sucks. Like I really wanted to do this thing and I didn't get it, or I failed, or I had this goal, I didn't meet it. It feels kind of good for me to hear that, because I think it humanizes this idea of failure, that we're all experiencing it, because we are. We are all experiencing failure. And I think sometimes it feels good to hear about other people's failures, because then we know we're not the only ones that are falling short in areas of our life. And maybe if we have similar failures, we can be a little bit more collaborative, or be like, hey, I tried this worked well. Have you tried this? Or have you ever considered that? Or, when I have my friends that kind of, save me from myself. And they're like, ooh, weren't you just telling me about how you feel so spread thin? And then 1 minute later, you're like, let me tell you about all these ideas I have for more things I can do. I think it really can increase that connection. And this one surprised me, but failure actually builds your confidence. So experiencing failure can build your confidence over time. And it's basically because people are learning that failure is not the end, that it's a part of growth. So it's like every time you fail and you bounce back, or you fail and you bounce back, or, it's whatever. What do they say? You fail, fall down 9 times, but get up 10, whatever the sports analogy is. But basically, the more that people fail, and then they're like, oh, I failed and I bounced back, or I failed and I tried again, it does improve people's confidence over time. And they kind of allow themselves to take some more kind of calculated risks. They know that even if this is hard, I'll get through it. Or even if I fail or I fall short, I'll get through it. Life will go on. It really helps to build people's confidence. But for me, the big thing is that failure is really highlighting the areas that need improvement, and that it provides feedback, really valuable feedback, and it often leads to future success or a different direction when you kind of meet that failure with resilience and you try again. And embracing it as part of the journey, an opportunity to learn, a natural kind of element of the human experience. And realizing that failure isn't the opposite of success, but it's a process that leads to the growth, achievement, and ultimate success that you will have. It really just teaches us about what's not working, what needs to be changed. And it's just a part of truly the path that you're walking to success. So if anyone is struggling with feeling like a failure, or like they failed, or they fell short, or anything like that, those are all things, positive things about failure. And also I hold the space for the fact that it sucks. When I think about, my flop year, if you will, how did it make me feel in the short term? Not good, right? I'll be honest. I can meditate all I want. I can work on detaching myself from my thoughts. I can go to therapy. I can work on, not tying up my worth to my achievements and say, oh, success is a construct, all these things. But in the short term, when I saw just how short I had fallen of my goals, it was kind of like, wah, wah. But in the long term, sitting with it for a little bit, I feel a lot better about it. Looking at all of this has really made me reflect. And also, I think I'm still kind of coming down on my Iceland high, because I got to see Daniela, as you guys know, my bestie. And we did a lot of talking. Her and I, the gift of gab, just chat, 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 chat. And so I did a lot of internal processing and just quiet and solitude during the retreat, and also some verbal processing with her. She's a very safe space. And it opened my eyes that I was trying to do too much. I was trying to do a little of a lot, and I think it shows. And that I thought I could just magically grow in every aspect of my life with less time, and navigating a huge life change of welcoming a baby into the world. And then there were curveballs that I didn't expect coming up. And it just wasn't realistic, what I had dreamt of. And I'm just feeling really grateful for that time to reflect. And if I was really summing up this year, it wouldn't feel like ease. I don't remember what I say, happiness and ease or something. No, tired and frazzled is kind of how the year felt. And I don't want to be either of those things. It also really makes me feel a certain way to say that out loud, because I didn't start this work. I didn't start meditating. I didn't start sharing yoga and meditation because I wanted to feel tired and frazzled. And it really isn't the essence of who I am, what I want to be, or what I want my business to be. And that's been so eye-opening to me. And so I'm feeling this pull to be able to return kind of to my mission, maybe pare down some things, focus on doing a few things well instead of trying to do everything, truly kind of save me from myself. I just, in my personal life the other day, this popped up and I again said, oh, she really had to save me from myself there, where, there's a certain thing that I'm working on or that I'm helping someone work on. And if you were to come to me, and this is something, not me about to tell you about a new business idea I have when I'm already like, I feel so tired and frazzled. I need to focus on doing a few things well. If this were a job, if I could just be an idea generator, I would love that. Like if you are listening to this and you're like, I am a dog groomer, a dog groomer. And you came to me and you're like, can you just come up with some fun ideas of things that I could do differently to maybe like build my business or do a community event or things like that? And I wouldn't have to do anything about it. I could just go, yes. I think this is the ADHD in me. I'd be like, yes. Have you ever thought about a how to bathe your dog 101 workshop where pet owners can come in and they can learn about like the basics of like, I don't know, like Mila has really sensitive skin and like the flora on her skin gets thrown off sometimes and she gets like these little infections. I'm like, could you teach like a how to care for your dog's skin 101 workshop? If that were like a job where people could just come to me, they send me a voice note of like, here's what I do. Can you send me a voice note of like some ideas back? I'd be like, yes. And then I could just like rip them off and send some ideas. Some maybe would be keepers, some wouldn't. That I would love. The problem is, again, I have to save me from myself. I do that for me when I sit there and I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I want to do next year for mindful minutes? I'm like, well, I want to do this, and I want to do that, and I love this idea, and oh my gosh, I should do this, and it's just too much. So I'm helping someone in my personal life through something, and the way I handle stress in my life. Let's say, for example, if I slipped on the ice and broke my ankle, I was like, okay. Now this is exactly how I would approach it. Maybe this is something I have therapy later today. Maybe this is something I should unpack with her. But I'm like, okay, I have this broken ankle. Here's the plan. Doctor says this cast is on for 6 to 8 weeks. Then I need to do physical therapy for 12 weeks after that, and this and that. I look at, here's what I need to know. Then I start making this plan. I'm like, okay, great. So every, a few days a week, in my meditation practice, I'm going to visualize this ankle healing. And I read that, whatever, dark leafy greens is better. So I'm going to make sure that every day I'm incorporating more dark leafy greens for my bone health. And then I have the cast scheduled to come off this day. So I'm already on the wait list to then start physical therapy 48 hours later. And then I'm going to do I would have this 10-step action plan for how to deal with this one thing in my life. That is just how I do it. For better or for worse. Sometimes it's helpful. Sometimes it's not. And I found myself trying to help someone in my life with something and be like, okay, great, you have this thing. And now I did some research and it seems like this particular thing could be a great complementary therapy to what you're already doing. Do you want me to call and reach out to some places and, see if they have spots or they have a wait list? And then I also read that you can try this, or maybe acupuncture would be a good idea. Do you want me to reach out to do that? And I had to have, one of the people I was talking to be like, okay, pause. You can't, sometimes less is more. And you need to just focus on one thing at a time, or be like, you know what? If you're working on something, just do a couple of things. See if that works. See how it's doing. Let it integrate. Then maybe you add more on. And I think embracing this idea of less is more is going to be really big for me in this coming year. And that's, truly to me, that's kind of the essence of what mindful in minutes is. Less is more. Just taking a few minutes every day to meditate, to turn inward, to slow down, to learn something about yourself. That's what it's about. Not having to spend, having this tenfold approach to try to become your most enlightened, elevated, a version of yourself. It's no, just one little micro habit that can lead to a big impact. And so I really had this kind of return to center moment, even particularly in the last 3-4 months. So I'm actually grateful for this year. Let's see. I also wrote some notes, and then we're going to get into mindful minutes wrapped because there were some really exciting things that happened this year. What do I do? What helped me in these moments of struggle and failure? Sometimes talking about it helps, but also sometimes not. So giving myself space to maybe share it on a podcast, and also if it'd feel better to keep it to myself, keep it to myself. So that one's kind of up to you. I think sometimes talking to someone, a trusted someone, is helpful. And then sometimes I think just keeping it to yourself is helpful too. Reflection, so making an ins and outs list. What is working, what isn't working, or just journal. I personally, when I was looking at where I fell short, I did make an ins and outs list, and I looked at all the things I was doing. And I was like, okay, private sessions, mentorships, corporate clients, podcasting, retreats, all these things. I looked at all of them, and I crossed a lot of them off of the list. None of them impact you, but like private sessions and mentorships right now, I don't have the time to do it. Corporate clients, not really doing that, at least for the next year, and then I can reassess again. So taking some things off my plate and deciding what stays in, what goes out, or just journaling on failure, just reflecting on the failure in general. Some things might really come up for you. Asking myself how I feel now and then how I want to feel in the future. And then writing down a few, again, less is more, actionable ways to get there. So if I say, you know what, right now I feel frazzled and I feel tired, I would like to feel, how do I want to feel? I want to feel free and fulfilled. Not so tired and frazzled, more free and fulfilled. And I would write down some action steps to get there. So again, like an ins and outs list would be one. Doing like a time audit. How much time am I really spending in these different aspects of my life, and where is there imbalances? Just a few simple actionable things I can do to decide how I'm feeling now, but how I can get to where I want to be or how I want to feel. Meditation. I don't know what I would have done this year without meditation. Just sit with it. Sit with the feelings. Work through them. Reflect. Repeat. Just be. You don't have to have every meditation practice that you do be on your failure. But when you're like, you know what? like yesterday I was just really emotional. And I was just like, I'm just having a lot of feelings, little things, a little worries, fear, emotions creeping in. And so it's like, okay, once all the kids were resting, I had a little bit of just time, not having to be mom. I was like, I just need to sit with this and unpack this. Like, why? What's the actual feeling here that's causing the emotion? It was so helpful. Meditation always helps. And then looking at what you did achieve. Of course, the thing that we're really going to fixate on is what we didn't achieve, but looking at what you did achieve, which leads me to the Mindful in Minutes Wrapped. So we have completed 7 years of podcasting, which is insane, incredible, amazing. I published only on Mindful in Minutes, including Patreon episodes, 111 episodes of Mindful in Minutes this year. So that ends up with community minis, freeforms, all of that. That's about 2 episodes a week, which is a lot. I published a book, my second book. That book was picked up and carried nationally in Whole Foods, which is bonkers. And I got to go to my Whole Foods. I had to bring my kids. And Meditation for the Modern Family was in Barnes & Noble all across. I got to take my kids this year to Barnes & Noble and show them the book that I wrote. Pork Chop and I went to Whole Foods just down the road together. He did say that Buzz Lightyear wrote that book. And I was like, excuse me, don't give Buzz Lightyear the credit for my hard work. But I got to show Pork Chop this thing that I was so proud of, and I got to share it with my kids and be like, I did that. And I think that that's something I get a little emotional even thinking about it, because it's something that I want to model for my kids. Of course I want to model following your dream and having these big achievements. And as my kids get older and they understand more of the nuances, I know I'll model failure for them. And I also want to model how to get through it. And I think that this year I kind of got to do both of, there are moments even little mini failures. Sometimes, I get overstimulated and I get a little snappy with my kids. And I'll have to go back to Pork Chop and say, hey buddy, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that, I'm sorry that I kind of yelled at you there. I was just feeling really frustrated. I didn't get it right. I'm sorry about that. And even that to me is kind of modeling these little failures. And I'll ask them, be like, hey, can we try again? Or mommy just took a few deep breaths. Could we give it another try? Could we try to do Play-Doh again? This time maybe, we don't throw it at the dog and then she eats it or whatever, whatever it is. And so I feel I kind of got to model both for them this year of high highs and what to do in the low lows at times. We did challenges, giveaways, so many things, held one retreat, and Scotland is completely sold out with this very long wait list, which is incredible, and also hard because I think I want to do just maybe like one international retreat a year. So it's like 2025 is full. Maybe I'm considering like a shorter domestic, like US or maybe Canada. That would be like maybe a long weekend. But in terms of like the big, long, like week-long international, it was much harder to leave the kids this time. I'd never left Poppy for this long before. And in my heart, I want to do like one really good international retreat a year. And so again, that part of me that's like, do more, be more. It's like, oh my gosh, well, Scotland's completely sold out. It's totally full. You have all these people on the wait list, like emailing you once a week being like, is there a spot? Can I come? And then that part of me wants to be like, well, I would just add a second date. What if I just stayed for another week and ran it back to back? But again, I have to pause, save me from myself. But yeah, anyways, like that's amazing. So incredible. The top 5 performing episodes for Mindful Minutes. I love looking at this and being like, which episodes were like the ones. The top episode of the year, and we're going to revisit this on the actual birthday, Mindful Minutes birthday, in a few days. I'm going to do a bonus meditation, and I'm going to revisit this one. But it was a 10-minute mind clearing meditation. That one was the number 1 episode of the whole year. I'm going to revisit and do actually, we'll see. I'm still trying to decide. It'll just be a surprise. So I have a spooky, this time of year, I always do kind of like a spooky Halloween. We're doing a cord cutting meditation. And I guess I could do that on the birthday. Right now I have it planned in my spreadsheet to be Sunday's meditation. I don't know. We'll see which one I do first. But anyways, Sunday, and then I think on the 30th, which is the birthday, there'll be the bonus episode. One of those will be a revisiting it's going to be a thought-clearing meditation. I've written it. I really like it. So that was the top one. The second one is the 20-minute nap time meditation. That one just barely missed the top spot by like 500 listens. The daily gratitude meditation came in third, then the nervous system reset meditation, and then the last one was the bedtime yoga nidra. And those 5 episodes of the 111 that I wrote, recorded, and produced, those had a combined play count of just under 150,000, which I'm sorry, that is insane. That is a bonkers number. And the fact that many people listen to only 5 of my meditations is so incredible, so humbling, so grounding to me that it's like, again, I set these really high expectations for myself. And it's like, okay, this wasn't the number. I was like, okay, what if I wanted my top 5 episodes to be 200,000? And then I'm like, what? It was only 150,000? No. There was a time where I dreamt of this podcast having 1,000 downloads in a week, or like an episode reaching 1,000 downloads. That was a dream that I had one day. And now I'm saying the top 5 episodes combined had 150,000 downloads. That is insane. And I don't know how I can feel bad about that. I feel great about that. Even if maybe, I don't even remember what last year's was. I don't know. Maybe last year the top 5 did do 200. I don't even know. And I don't even care. I feel so good I feel so like humbled by that. I had a baby this year. I published a book that was carried in Whole Foods. I got through one of the tougher personal years of my life, at least one of the tougher ones I've had in recent history. A lot went well. And I just feel like the numbers just don't reflect that. And I'm so okay with it. I learned so much. I have gotten to know myself better. I have had to look inward a lot, reflect, reassess, reset. And I'm feeling really optimistic for the upcoming year. Some of the really tricky curveball things aren't going away anytime soon. I'm still going to have to work through them, definitely, probably through the next year. However, there are some things that are in my control that I can do differently and reassess in that way. So my dreams for the upcoming year. Let's see. Did I do it again? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I did 7, and last year I did 6. Okay, well, we'll see. So I do want to grow Mindful Minutes in the next year and really focusing on building the community. I loved doing that last year. I would like to do a 5% growth, because a good goal is something that you can measure. 5% growth for Mindful Minutes. Because a lot of the things that I am phasing out or just not focusing on this year, like the one big thing I really want to focus on is this podcast, making it just better, improving upon, building the community. A 5% growth for Mindful Minutes, and then I put a 10% growth for Meditation Mama. So those I want to do. I do want to launch Yoga Nidra teacher training. I know I keep talking about this Yoga Nidra teacher training. And again, life threw me some curveballs where it's like, it's probably going to happen. I'm thinking, because here's the deal, guys. Let me give you a little inside baseball on this. Right now, we're in October. I either needed to share Yoga Nidra teacher training this month, which is absolutely not happening. It's just not going to get done on time. Or then November, we have an election coming up here in the U.S. We're going to be distracted, right? Big things going on here. Then it's Thanksgiving. And then after Thanksgiving, we're just in full-blown holiday mode. You, me, everyone, both. And you're just coasting till Christmas. And then it's the new year. And then all of a sudden it's January. So if it didn't happen this month, it's not going to happen until probably January, maybe early February. But 2025, Yoga Nidra teacher training will come to life. I've made a goal for myself to only work after the kids go to bed one night a week. That's it. The other 6 days of the week are going to be for me. One night a week, I will work after the kids go to bed, and then I'm just going to do whatever I want to do the other 6 nights. I want to look back on this year and say that I gave everything I had to my family. And then I want to do one thing for my personal learning each month. But I'm going to be flexible on what this is. Could be listen to a podcast, could be take a class, could be read a book, a workshop, anything. Just one thing a month. And then my last one is I want to feel less frazzled, more free. So those are my dreams, my goals for the upcoming year. That is all I have. Thank you for being here, whether you've been here for 7 years or 7 days or 7 minutes. Thank you for being here. I truly, I know I've said it a million times, but I'll say it just one more time. I'm so grateful for what I get to do, for being able to create this, for all of you, for coming here, letting me be in your ears as also a podcast listener. I know what an intimate experience that is. I know I get so excited. I'm like, oh, a new episode of my favorite podcast. And the fact that I get to be that for some of you is just mind blowing to me and so special. This is one of the most special things that I have in my life. And I'm so grateful for all of you that listen and are here and a part of this community. So thank you for that. Yeah. And we will revisit in a year. And I don't know if you're listening to all of this, if you want to, a new thing you can do that's kind of fun. In Spotify, if you're listening on Spotify, you can leave a comment on the episode, which is kind of fun. I don't know, maybe share it with me, something either you're celebrating or something that you're doing differently. I don't know. You can leave comments, or if you want to leave some birthday wishes for the podcast in a review on Apple Podcasts, that would be really nice and helpful. Certainly not mandatory, but as we're wrapping up here and you're about to click away on this episode because it's ending, I don't know. You could send Mindful Minutes a little birthday love if you feel so inclined. But I'm appreciative of you. And thank you for being here. And I hope wherever you are that you are having a wonderful day. And I'll see you on Sunday. Bye.